Alrighty guys, this is my most recent purchase. This is a D3B. I got it for $5 grand. Goose is having fun. Oh, he brought us a tree to play with. Got this thing for $5 grand. Motor runs great, fires right up, but it wouldn't move. When I got to looking at it, the radiator was out, no radiator fluid, and the oil lines for the transmission were in there and they were unhooked. So I think the guy told me the guy that owned it died. They're selling off his stuff, trying to make a little money. So I paid $5 grand. Took a little roll of the dice here, but if I can get it running without too much, I think it'll definitely be worth it. Tracks look like they're in pretty good shape. The grousers are decent. These are actually a sealed and lubed track with a master link, which is rare. Well, not rare, but more expensive version. Pin bushings look pretty decent. Trying to get you a look in here. So there's actually plenty of meat. They're really not wore that bad. These tracks are not completely wore out, so that's nice. Looks like the idler wheels the seals are out. I see a bunch of grease. They also welded this plate on to hold the track tight. So I'm sure we'll have to dive into that. The sprockets don't look terrible. Those are the type that press on too, so those are gonna be a bear if I have to change those. But overall, I'm decently happy with it. I think what happened is they had a hole in the radiator, pulled it out to fix it, never got around to it, and then the guy died and they sold it. So fingers crossed, if I fix the radiator, put it back in, fill the transmission and the oil cooler back up, hopefully it runs and drives. So, but the motor runs real good. It's not terribly bad, greasy looking. Doesn't look like it blew a head gasket or anything crazy. And these old motors tolerate a decent amount of heat, I would venture to say. So I think we might have got a decent deal for $5 grand. So, you know, if this thing was running and driving, I bet you could sell it for 10 tomorrow. You know, if you had a real cleaned up and real nice one, it might even a little more. So, you know, I've seen these go up to like 20,000 on Marketplace. At least they're listed for that. But man, so let's dive into this thing and see what the radiator looks like. All right, so I got the radiator out. First I thought I found the problem. There was a hole there. I got excited. I was like, oh man, I can braze that thing together and we'll be in good shape. The rest of the radiator didn't look too bad. Big dent on this side, but didn't look like it was leaking. Then I flipped it over and saw all this mess. So this thing's been patched before and the patch rusted out. Now we've got a pretty massive hole in the bottom of the radiator. I was spraying water in it, got a bunch of muck out, but it looks like the actual core is in decent shape. So I think the majority of our problem is down here. Aftermarket radiator for this is about $1,200, which not terrible if we have to, but haven't only paid $5. Kind of like to avoid that if I can, at least until I know the machine actually runs. If it runs good, then I'd be a little more, you know, excited about dropping $1,200 on a radiator. So, and I can look used too and possibly find one, but I think for now, with as much rust we got here, may try to cut this bottom support off, get this out of there, and then get in here and see what I can do about getting a patch on this if I can get this cleaned up enough. Get it to hold some radiator fluid just to test this thing out. So let's dive into it, see what we can do. Alright guys, I got it all welded up. Welded decent. You know, that's a little thin on these edges. I tried to cut back till I had good material without getting into any of these bosses. I had a little spot where I started to burn through a little there, but overall it did okay. So the next step will be pressure testing this, make sure we don't got leaks. If we do, grind them out and fix them. Also need to take a fan fork or a radiator fork and get some of those big dents out of the radiator. But overall, not too shabby. Assembly a whole heck of a lot better than it was. So there's a pretty big dent right here. I don't know if you can see, but I pulled that out as best I could. I didn't want to heat up the whole thing and end up messing up the solder joints, but hopefully that works. Alright guys, I got a bottle here with some soapy water. Been spraying on this. Got a ball hitch shoved in a piece of pipe down there to block that off. Yeah, we got an air hose and a rag. Only thing I found is it was oozing just slightly around that fitting, but I think it's coming from the fitting. No air pockets up here. Looks like this fitting is also leaking a little bit. But all of our welds look good. I also sprayed the front face of the radiator and the other side, and I think everything else is pretty well sealed. So, may have fixed it. Sweet. Alrighty guys, so welcome back to the shop. I think you saw some footage of getting the radiator all fixed up and ready for this thing. So I've done a little bit off camera since then. Basically just went through the whole machine, gave it a service, changed all the fluids. You know, there's a bevel gear in the middle, there's 2 final drives, there's hydraulic oil, there's transmission oil, there's engine oil. Basically went through, changed all the fluids other than the hydraulic oil because it looked pretty good. And I wanted to run it a little bit and change some lines and things, and then I'll fill it with good oil once I'm done doing all that. But all of that looked good. Everything, I was able to switch it out. No issues. The fluids are actually in pretty good shape, no water. And then I went ahead and put that cowling on. So you can see there, cowling is back on. Definitely doesn't match the paint job quite as well, the old stuff. So it's the only good looking part on the machine, but I painted that front, I straightened the front grill out as best I could and sledgehammered the cowling and did a little sledgehammer body work. We got that looking a lot nicer. And then that little metal plate is unbolted. Those are just weights on the front. I got to rebolt those in. But put the radiator back in. It's painted too. I don't see any obvious leaks. So I dripped some stuff when I was filling it, but I think we're sealed up pretty good. The oil lines are back on, which I think those were the culprit of this whole thing. But yeah, it's all back together. It actually fired up great. You can tell I knocked all the rust off the tracks. I took it out and ran it for a little bit. Sorry, my dog is trying to puke something up. But I went and ran it, and it will shift gears, steer. We got reverse, we got everything. One major issue though is this track adjuster is super loose, and I can't get it to take grease. I think the tracks are just froze, that idler's stuck. So I'm gonna break the tracks and get in there and try and repair that. Now that I know the machine runs, the transmission works, it's worth pulling that apart and figuring that out. The other side has just a plate welded to keep it tight. So depending on how invasive it is to get this fixed, I may take this side apart too once I'm doing it, just do it all at once and get it fixed. The blade has definitely a little bit of slop in it. You can see some of those bushings look a little wore out. It's not terrible. I mean, you can still grade with it, but the blade did have some slop, so it's definitely higher on the list of things I'd like to fix at some point. But overall, I'm absolutely tickled. I mean, this thing ran great. It pushed dirt. I was actually pretty impressed by the power. We got our T650 right there, and this thing pushes dirt like, I don't know, twice as much or 3 times as much as that T650. It's pretty crazy, the difference. So yeah, let's let's dive on into this.
Making a gigantic mess, but damn, is it fun.
Alright guys, well my time lapse got cut short because it started raining, but a little tarp set up here. I yanked the track off with the skid loader that's over there. So I'm working on trying to get this idler to move. I ran the needle scaler. Oh, sorry about that. I ran the needle scaler across all of this. I was taking a look at it. I think what's happened here is this thing rusted. I think they ran this in manure because I'm seeing a lot of chunks of manure. I think that's why this undercarriage is rusted so bad. I mean, it's way rustier than it should be. But see all this rust here? I think there's been some rust jacking, so this is swollen, and now that is pinching that idler, and it won't allow that idler to slide back and forth. So we're having, I just cannot get this thing to move. And I put a chain on it, yanked on it with the skid loader, beat on it with a sledgehammer. I tried pumping up the grease piston, but it was leaking grease all around here, so the seals are bad. That's supposed to be a chrome shaft in there, but it is, as you can tell, it's no longer a chrome shaft. But what I'm trying to do now is just disassemble what I can, and then just try to loosen this thing up as I go. I might be able to even put a wafer wheel or cut-off wheel underneath here and cut some of that. We'll see. These bolts are, I mean, there's like nothing left of these bolts. So I'm just heating them up using some vice grips. Got the first two out. So I'm going to keep working on getting those out. And then I got to try and get in here. You can tell these are in rough shape. So I'll try and get in there and do what I can to get those off. This backside looks even worse than the front, honestly. So I think it's probably more froze. But it's kind of tricky because you need this whole assembly to slide out in order to get the seals in here. So I can take this apart, but it doesn't really matter because I can't do anything once I get it apart. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep chipping away at it. So let's see what I can do. Hopefully we can get this thing to slide. So. Alright guys, so I'm not sure how much of that you were able to really see in the time lapse, but I just went full Pakistani truck on this thing. So if you look at these rails here, I don't know if it's probably hard to see, but this is where I needle scaled up to here. Then there's this big ridge of all that rust, and this is where I needle scaled behind it. So basically that roller, there's a bottom lip and a top lip. This thing rides, you know, right here and down there on that. So that rust swelled, made that thing super tight. But then once we got off this ridge to the part where I needle scaled, then it went much smoother. So I used a combination of the porta power with a cylinder on it behind it, just up against the frame here. Also used the bottle jack for a minute there. But bottle jack's got to be, you know, laying, oh man, I got grease all over my watch. Bottle jack's got to be pump side down in order to pump. At least mine does. I don't know, maybe they're not all like that, but that's how mine is. But it's hard to fit it in there. What I found the best was putting the porta power cylinder and then smacking the carriage down there with a sledge. That shock kind of helped judder it along. But basically just fought that thing, and then I ended up just sledgehammering it the rest of the way out. So when in doubt, just grab a bigger hammer, you know? So that is out. Here's our grease piston. So this rod's supposed to be chrome all the way up, obviously. No longer chrome up here. Again, I think this undercarriage was in a bunch of manure, so it ate that away. Chrome back here looks pretty good. We do have some pitting on the shaft here. I'm sure those seals are shot up inside there. This thing just slides clear out of here. Seals are all up in there. So next thing is going to be trying to take these cap bolts off and get in there and see what we got. I'll look and see how much, if I can find just the yoke. I might buy just the yoke. I did see you can buy the whole spring assembly and everything for, I think it was like 1,500 bucks, $2,000, which it's not awful, but it is a little pricey. The other thing I could do would be get a piece of chrome shafting and just chuck this in my lathe, turn this down, make like a little nipple on this end, and then part it off, keep the yoke, and then machine a new shaft, machine a female to fit over that nipple, and then sleeve it in there just to get it started, and then weld that up. This isn't, you know, this is under just pretty much a linear load, so welding that shouldn't be an issue. I'm sure they probably actually, that's probably cast or forged, and then they probably welded this on or fit this up somehow. I'm not sure what these are here. I don't know if that's a weld or some sort of collar or what that is, but I'm sure when they manufacture this, it's in two pieces anyway, so that would probably be the cheapest option, would be to re-rod that. The yoke, I mean, it had some deep rust on it, but overall it's in fine shape, so I can clean that up and probably save it. But we'll see. I'll look at some parts and see what the cost looks like. As you can see here, we're gonna have another line boring project. If you haven't seen the other video, the excavator, check that out. I did a bunch of line boring on that thing. Yeah, those bushings there on the C-frame are wore clear out, so I don't know if I'm going to do that right off the bat because they're completely demolished already, so they can't really get worse. I don't know, we'll see how ambitious I'm feeling. The bushings are still in those cylinders out there, so they're not completely gone, so that's good. I won't have to reclaim the rod ends. I should just be able to put new bushings in, but I'm pretty sure most of these bushings are shot. When I ran it briefly, I could see the blade floating all over the place. So, but all right, I'm gonna get started on getting into this guy and see how tricky this is. I know with these springs are under quite a bit of tension. It's got to be careful mucking around in there not to let that spring explode and chop your fingers off. But I think I can take this cap off safely because this plate here runs into this, so I think the spring is contained. But we'll see. All right. Alright guys, so here's the next project. This is the tensor mechanism and the yoke that kind of attaches to the idler wheel off that D3B. So as you can see, shaft, pretty good shape back here. Where it was exposed to the elements, it gets progressively worse. It was basically sitting sucked in like right here, and all this chrome is completely gone. This is really pitted really deep and pretty bad shape. So couple different things we could do. One, buy a whole new part. It's about $500-600 bucks. By the time you ship it, probably maybe six plus, $100 bucks for the whole part, which isn't terrible. I do got to replace both sides, so $1,200 bucks to $1,400 bucks with shipping. Other option would be to clean this up as best we can. You know, the track was sitting here, so, and it was super loose, so the track will probably be, you know, tensioned somewhere up into here. Still have some pretty solid pitting there that's through the chrome. So that is, you know, it's not a reciprocating cylinder. You probably get away with it. I've heard of guys putting JB weld and flap disking it down. I thought about doing that too. But, you know, I'm in here, I'm doing this, I don't want to half-ass anything. So what I decided to do, as you can tell, is get a piece of 1.75" chrome bar. This is from CRC. It was about $100 for this piece. I believe that's an 18-inch piece. So what I'm going to do is, you know, this is probably cast or forged or something here. And then obviously this was joined to the chrome. So I'm going to put this in my lathe, get it running really nice and true, indicate off this. And I don't know if this is a weld or a collar or what this is. It's too rusted to tell. But I'm going to machine that down, see what we get into underneath there. And then hopefully I can separate that. If not, I will just machine this down, leave a tit on this, like a male end. And then I'll part it off, keep the yoke, get that thing cleaned up. And then I'm going to... so I can avoid this is a hardened, I got induction hardened chrome bar. So you can see the hardened layer. It's got a nice, thick, heavy chrome, and then this is induction hardened. So it's not through hardened, I don't believe. I think it's just like case hardened. But this is, you know, tougher to machine. So my goal is to just drill, bore to size, and then I will, that way I can avoid the hardened chrome. And then I will push the yoke in, leave a gap there. I'll grind this weld back or machine this weld back, and then press it in and then put a nice heavy weld on there. But the press fit was what will hold it square, and then we'll weld it up. So I got 2 pieces of that. I'm going to pull the other yoke off as well, and then put these 2 in the lathe and see what we can do here. So that's kind of the plan. Hopefully it works out, which I think it will. So I also picked up the seal kits. So this is the gland end off of the grease tensor. It's in pretty good shape. There's a lip seal here, and then there's like a spacer ring, and then another seal. So I got all those. These were pretty cheap. I think they were like $25 for a seal kit. And then it also comes with these little bushings that go on top of the grease fill cap. So I'll get these machined up, get this thing cleaned up, get it resealed, and then put this bad boy back together. And depending on how ambitious I'm feeling, I may get some paint on the undercarriage too. Get it pressure washed, needle scaled, and painted, but we'll see how that goes once I get there. So let's head over to the lathe. All right, guys. Hey, what's up, Goose? We are back on the old Lodge in Shipley here. So got the yoke up here in the lathe. Working on getting this indicated. Looks like we got maybe a couple thou run out of here at the end. Bumped it around a little bit. There's a bunch of pits in the chrome, so you can't trust it too much, but maybe just a few thou. We're dead nuts closer to the headstock here. Might be a little hard to see, but we're dead nuts. We're not even half a thou. So my plan is I'm going to put a center in here. There's no center in there already, so I'm going to put a center in there, and then I'll put my live center on, and then I'll start. I think I ran the needle scale over this. The more I needle scale, that looks just like 2 welds. So I'm going to try to machine down and find whatever they had before, you know, to join this thing together, because there may already be a little nipple on this or something. So I'm going to machine down, try and figure out how they join this up, and then once I get that figured out, then I can start turning down, you know, making my little nipple on the end, and then I'll throw this rod in and bore this out. Hopefully this will be pretty quick, but famous last words, right? Well, I don't know if you guys caught that on the time lapse, but I managed to snap my parting tool off somehow. Kind of eyeballed the center line. It may have been a little too low on center. The part tried to climb on the tool and snapped my tool. And I've got about the dullest hacksaw in the world over here in this shop, so I am just clawing my way through the last bit of this. The last 3 inches of this hacksaw have some teeth on it. I'm not just used to short strokes. All right. So that is our part. I never did really figure out how they put this together. There was a slight difference in the metal, but I never really found a great separation line. So I don't know if they left a male end that was, I don't know. I never really did see the separation between this part and the other part. However, it doesn't really matter. Either way, I'm gonna use this as the male end. I milled it, or turned it down just to 2 thou bigger than an inch. So 1 inch and 2 thou. And then polish it down, so it's really only like 1.5 thou. So I'm gonna bore the other hole to exactly 1 inch and then heat it up, and this should just slip right in. So let me get the, I gotta clean the end of this up, put a little chamfer on there. I'll probably just do it by hand with a file, and then get that other piece chucked in here. All right, guys, so of course, nothing can always go to plan. So got that rod machined out, pressed on there, and then I started looking at it. I don't know if it's, you can tell in the video, but the rod is not straight. So the rod leans this way a touch when you eyeball it. It's pretty noticeable. I mean, it's like probably, I don't know, 1/4 inch out across that distance. So the thing I don't know is, is there any reason why that rod should be at an angle? I've kind of been scratching my head about it. There's a chance that the shaft was bent, and when I indicated off the shaft, then it, I machined a nipple on this yoke down here, and that is crooked with the bent shaft. I don't think there's any reason why it should be crooked. So it puts me in kind of a pickle here. So I already have that pressed on. So to fix this properly, I could try heating it up and bending it, but I think that's a bad idea. I'm probably gonna need to try and, I only did like a 2 thou interference fit, maybe 1.5 thou. So I think if I warm this up a little bit, I could probably pop it off and hammer it on pretty easily. So I started working on the other one while I decide. This one, I just cut the shaft off, and then I threw it over here on the mill. It's good and sturdy. And then I decked this off. So, these are machined faces down here. They're nice and flat. That's on my mill table. So that is now machined flat. And I think what I'm gonna do for the other one, instead of pressing it together and holding it to weld it, I think I'm going to just machine it flat, put a taper for weld, and then set it on here, put a little support behind it, and then tack it up, make sure it stays good and straight, and then weld it up and just be done with it. All right, guys, so got the track frames in here. Been working on pulling some bolts and doing some random, just little things here. Had a bunch of broken bolts. Had one I had to drill out. I think you saw that on the time lapse. But now my goal is to get these all cleaned up, prepped for paint, make sure that our idlers have enough clearance on the rails, not too much clearance. Rails are a little beat up, may have to do a little bit of weld buildup. We'll see. I'm gonna kind of test fit them and see how sloppy they are. If I need to, I'll weld on them a little. Also need to get the grease cylinders cleaned out. I got new seals. I got one of my tensors here painted the other night. It's ready to go back in. Looks good. The other one I'm gonna get painted, cleaned up and ready for paint. Get that painted, and then get these bad boys put back together and get some paint on them. I'll probably do some needle scaling and clean up first, and then if I get all this area cleaned up, I'll probably rebuild, put the rod in, put the face caps on before I paint, just so I don't get paint all over that machine surface, and I can get underneath the rod, I think, fine. I don't know if I'll put the idler wheels back on in here. I may wait, get the rails painted, but we'll see. So gonna get these as back together as possible, then get some paint on them. So alrighty, guys, so I'm working on these track frames, getting them all prepped for paint. Got a bunch of broken bolts out, stuff off of here. So as you can see, there's pretty heavy pitting. This is a section I've already knocked out here. Back here is a section that still needs it. What I found to work best is I'm actually using just a descaling hammer. See, it's getting all bent up from how much I've been using it, but this really heavy rust, the needle scaler can't quite get through it. So it's actually faster just to go like that. You just sit here, just pound away. So that gets the big stuff. And then I've been coming through after I get the big scale off. If you look over here, you can see I got that all pretty much scale free there. I already did the other track frame. It takes a couple hours just to get this all knocked out. And then I wiped the other one down with acetone, and I've got it upstairs ready to spray. So the other thing I got to finish up too is rebuilding these grease pistons. So I got the yokes over here. As you can see, those came out nice, all painted up. So that thing is dry. I'm gonna get it uncovered, and then once this is descaled, I'm gonna rinse this bore out really good, get the old grease out of there, take these fittings out, clean those up, and I got all new seal kits, so I'll rebuild that cylinder, and then once it's rebuilt, wipe it all down with acetone, and then take this upstairs to get sprayed. So that's kind of the plan. I'm not gonna do a bunch of filming of this because this is just a crappy job. Just a lot of sitting here beating on it with a hammer and a needle scaler and wire wheel and acetone. So I'll bring you guys back when I get these set up to get them painted. All right, guys, so I got this thing all cleaned up. Planning on getting it back together here. So take a look. See, I got our rod all welded up, machined. Looks like it's sitting good in parallel with the rest of the track frame. I got this eye cleaned up, pounded in the new seal. There's a new lip seal there, and then also got this seal in here. So the seal kind of sits like this. You always want the two lips of the seal towards the pressure, so it's facing backward, and then the flatter side of the seal is facing out. There's also this little spacer cone that sits on there as well. So that slides in there. And then this outer plate just bolts on. So I got this all good and cleaned up. Just ran a bunch of socks through it, diesel fuel, and then compressed air, and just cleaned that all up. So it should look nice. I got new bolts here because all those old bolts were in pretty rough shape. And I plan on anti-seizing the crap out of everything. I really hope I'm not taking this apart again, but you never know. And if not me, at least we're helping the next guy, you know. So A lot of this was actually anti-seize when I took it apart. So whoever did have this part last time actually did save me quite a bit of headache. And these bolts are in they're in a grease tensor, so this thing will, when it gets old and fails, it'll be all covered with grease like the last ones were. So, it probably doesn't matter quite as much, but still, I like to be very generous. Anything I put together, I try to either put anti-seize or Loctite on. It's either one or the other. So I got that all coated. One can go in here. And then the way this thing works is there's 2 ports up here, and then there's a channel that's actually machined all the way the length of this cylinder in here. And then these communicate with these holes here. And then on these bolts, there's basically a channel. When it's all the way down tight, it's blocked off, so that doesn't communicate. Then you put grease in here, it goes down in here into the channel, all the way back behind the end of the rod, pressurizes the end of the rod and pushes it out. And then the seal inside seals it up, and then this lip seal just keeps, it's a wiper for the cylinder. So this isn't holding pressure, it's just a wiper seal. And then when you back these out, this little tapered flange no longer seals, and then the grease escapes from around it and then goes through this hole and then out into this space and then comes out the front. So that's kind of how that thing works. This one's in pretty rough shape, so I'm actually probably gonna order a set of these, but they just thread in here, and then I got new rubber seals in my seal kit when I bought all this. So I'm just gonna get this bolted up, tightened down, and then get this track frame wiped off. I got some towels set out for when I was cleaning this, just trying to keep the grease down to a minimum. I got the frames pretty cleaned up. It's no show car, but spent a few hours pounding rust and grinding, and it's a crappy job, but it'll hopefully give a higher quality finish on the paint. Lasts a long time. All right, I'll get these torqued down, and then we'll go upstairs and get ready for paint. All right, guys, so I got our track frame sprayed here. Got a little time lapse. Looks pretty good. That's the first coat. Planning on putting another one on. I did go pretty heavy. That paint I was using actually is pretty tolerant to going on heavy. It doesn't really run. Pretty, it was actually very nice to spray. It's just implement paint, but it's sprayed real nice. Those are looking good. After, now you can really see that spring right there is cracked. Those are contained though, and I'm gonna let it be for now. But yeah, they look really good. Happy with how that came out. It takes a hot minute to spray those though, getting all those nooks and crannies underneath. But I'm gonna let that dry. I'll do one more coat before we reassemble. This is what I was using to spray this Magic tractor implement paint. So I just use one of these guns. I don't know, this is like a middle of the road. It's not the cheapest ones you can get, but it's one we've had for a few years in the shop here. HVLP gun. I've got a 1.5 nozzle on it. It seems to spray pretty good. Recently I did get one of these reusable or disposable paint container holders. So there's like paint bags that go in there, and there's a little adapter. And then this adapter screws onto the top of your gun. Super handy though, because It comes with one of these containers, but it is kind of a pain to clean it. I used it to rinse the gun out, but it's kind of a pain to clean that. I like the disposable ones. You can just toss them when you're done. Actually, I got one laying here. I can show you. So this is what you get. These are just off Amazon. They were cheap, but that's the disposable part. There's actually a filter membrane in the lid as well, and then that's what clicks onto that little adapter. But they're a pretty slick setup. The ratio I did was 450 mLs of paint to 100 mLs of reducer to 50 mLs of catalyst hardener. It's like 4 to 2 to 1 or something, but that was the ratio. 450 paint, 100 a reducer, 50 catalyst. Sprayed real nice. Again, it was very tolerant. I had my fan turned down pretty tight. So I had it pretty narrow because I didn't want to waste a bunch of overspray. And then I had my like dump valve or the volume valve, whatever that's called, turned up pretty high, so I was laying down a pretty fat coat of paint. But I want these are going to take some serious abuse, so they need to have a nice thick layer of paint. But I'll wait for those to cure a little bit and then get another coat on at some point here. Got a little odds and ends to do. Got to still, get the rollers painted, or not the rollers, but the front idlers painted. They were in good shape, so I'm going to reuse them. I got all new bottom rollers. Top rollers were in good shape, so I left them, but I got all new bottoms to put on. I made those chrome rods like you saw in the beginning part of the video, machined those, welded those. They were actually bent, so I lost a little bit of footage. I was kind of pissed off at them, so I didn't film everything, but they were bent, and I choked the rod in the lathe, or chucked the rod in the lathe, and then machined the yoke part off, but I machined them crooked because it was based on the bent rod. So I pressed the first one together, realized that the yoke was sitting super crooked. You can even see the eye. I can bring you up in here, you can probably even see this. You can see where I machined the center. The center is not even close to center, and that's because the rod was bent. So luckily I noticed it on the first one. It's pretty obvious, but I ended up just taking the cutoff wheel and cutting that rod off completely, and then I put the chrome rod in the lathe, turned back a further taper so I had room to weld, and then I actually just set up a little fixture, held the rod nice and square, had the yoke clamped down, face down, got it all lined up perfectly, and then put some nice tacks around it to hold it in place, and then fully welded the rod on. So I think I got it pretty dang square. It looks like it's running really true with the track frame, and it looks like, this is nice and perpendicular. So I had to do that to both of them because the rods were too bent to indicate. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but in machining terms, couldn't indicate off the rods. They were too crooked. So not sure why they were bent, to be honest. I don't know if when I disassembled it, I was using hydraulic rams and I might have torqued that and bent those, or maybe they just got beat up over time. The track frames were really tight with rust getting the idlers off. But then once I got all the rust off, they actually moved pretty freely. There's a spec in the manual, I think it was like 100 thousandths or something, of play you're supposed to have between the front idler and the track frames. I could basically fit like a thin cutoff disc underneath. So to me, that seems like a pretty fair amount of play for a Dozer track frame. The front idler, I put it on the engine lift and I couldn't get more than like a cutoff disc under this one. So I didn't check the other side, but I figured they're probably about the same. Someone had already welded shim plates on. You see down in here, on this bottom side, there was already a shim plate welded there. So somebody's already taken up the slack in these at some point. I debated on welding the tops of these and then grinding it down, but with the amount of energy that would take, it'd probably be faster to just cut that top plate off and put a new one on and square it up and weld it in. But when I checked the idler wheels, they actually looked pretty close, like I said. So I decided to leave well enough alone. After all, it is a 50-year-old Bulldozer or more. So I think we'll see what they do. if there's an exceptional amount of play and I see that front idler moving all over the place, then I'll take it apart and do something else. But I think for now I'm pretty happy with that. The pitting on this thing was insane. I mean, way more corrosion than you should see on a Dozer frame. So further supports my theory that they were pushing manure with this and just left manure packed in these tracks. So found a lot of manure when I was cleaning it out, so I think that manure and all the urea or whatever is in there just ate these alive. But one other thing I got to do still is there was guards that are supposed to cover the spring and the idler shaft there. Those guards were completely gone. There were still some tabs on the frame, but the tabs were destroyed, so I ended up just cutting those off and grinding them off. So that's the only thing left to figure out is, you know, do I run it with no guards, but then I'm worried I'll beat up my new chrome rod, so I really don't want to run it with nothing. Could just put a plate that covers up the chrome, keep it from getting hit by rocks. Could put a piece of hose protection over the chrome and just zip tie it. That'd be the most hillbilly and quickest thing to give it some protection, but if you turn into a big rock or something, it's not going to protect against that. The other option is trying to find old guards, which I looked on the internet. I can't even find really any options for guards. Might be able to find a junkyard dozer or something, but they're thin metal, so that's like the first thing that'll rust out. That's hence why they're gone on this. The other option, which I'll probably end up having to do, is make steel guards. Get some sheet metal and bend it and then make a bunch of mounts, but that's quite a undertaking. We've got a project for this dozer right now that I need to get on, so I'm kind of rushing to get this thing done, so we'll see what I come up with, but I have to address that somehow. I don't want these new chrome rods. I went through all the work of machining those, don't want them destroyed. But this is not my primary occupation. This is just for fun and for the farm here, so it's been difficult to balance work with trying to. There's projects we want to do this summer with the machine, and I need it running, and I keep just taking it further apart. So we'll see. But yeah, those look pretty good. I won't film any painting the second coat, but bring you guys back when we throw the idler and the bottom rollers on and all that stuff, and get the machine all back together and ready to go. So makes me want to paint the rest of it, but I think I don't have to wait for a little while. I've had enough fun wire wheeling rust. maybe this winter I'll pull it in and take it apart. We'll see. But, all right.